Hello, everyone, and very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. So, today's webinar topic is on circular future for PV, which is the traceable and repairable solar panels. My name is Trishna, and I'm a senior growth marketer here at Circularise. I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. And before we dive in, let's cover a few quick housekeeping notes to ensure you have the best experience. The first thing is this webinar is being recorded. We'll send you a link to the recording and presentation slides afterwards, so you can just sit back and focus on what we're talking about without worrying about taking notes. And second thing is we want this session to be interactive. So we have a few poll questions to get to know you and your thoughts. And we highly encourage you to ask us questions and the panel questions. Please use the question and answer tab at the bottom right corner of your screen. And we have a dedicated Q&A panel at the end. So please submit your questions there as they come to your mind, and we can address it at any point of time during the webinar or during the Q&A session afterwards. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so we're all here because we believe in solar energy. What's actually crucial and for the green energy transition. But this incredible success story has created what we call the solar paradox, the green energy growing waste. The reality is that millions and millions of tons of you know solar panels will be reaching their end of life in the coming years. The vast majority of the current solar panels were not designed to be easily repaired or recycled. This means that the backbone of our renewable energy infrastructure could create a massive future waste problem. So, what's the hidden problem? the the challenge goes deeper, and the fundamental problem is the lack of transparency. Right now, it's nearly impossible to know what's inside a solar panels, what materials were used, where they came from, and how the panel has performed over its life. The information black hole makes responsible and high value recycling incredibly difficult and expensive. So, with this, we need to know now how we will address this problem. So, that's what the Fair PV project is about. And it was created to solve exactly this kind of problem. And today, we're going to show you how we can build that infrastructure for a circular solar economy. To do that, we have first a fantastic panel of experts who worked on this project together and who are here today. So we'll have Maria take you through this project first, and then we can have a panel discussion with the panelists, and I will introduce you to them at that time. Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and good afternoon to everybody. As Teresa already mentioned, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the work that we have done on the Fair PV project so that you get an idea of what we're up to and a little bit of the context of why we're doing this. So the project seeks to enable a fair solar industry through circularity and traceability. So besides all the mentioned issues by Teresa before, there are some others, for example, that currently half of the market of the panel cells comes from China. So if we're in Europe and we're seeking for a European or resilient economy, this can be harmful for this. For example, 45% of polysilicon, that it's one of the main components from the panel cells, comes from China. And the production of the cells themselves, many of the suppliers are still heavily reliant on coal. And this is also a very energy intensive process, as well as there have been a lot of claims on forced labor. So given all the circularity and all the regulations that Europe has, these are things that should be considered in order to get these fair um, energy, or well, like this fair industry. We also see that for the energy transition, we're now using many critical materials without an answer on how to effectively reuse them. And recycling, it's still a very low quality process. And for example, for solar panels, these aren't yet built for repair or adequate recycling. So this is why it is important to proactively focus on creating a circular and transparent industry, which is what we're doing here in Fair PV. So the project comprises multiple Dutch companies and research institutes. It is led by AMS Institutes, and the main partners are the Technical University of Delft, Biosphere Solar, and Circularise. And we cover multiple fields to ensure innovation is made for real use cases involving research and also industrial partners. We also have multiple stakeholders that are from the different stages of the value chain and have different roles in the solar panel industry, that this also further supports the optimal results and advances of the project. And we have divided the project into three main parts. First is the development of a circular panel, so the building itself of a panel. Second, it's the support on the digital tools for the traceability, as well as the predictive maintenance and compliance with all these regulations. And finally, we have the testing of these tools that are being developed. So the first part, as I mentioned, is the development of a unique repairable solar panel, that this is done by Biosphere Solar and TU Delft. This new panel uses a edge seal instead of glue, which is very important for recycling. This improves the recyclability rate and the processes themselves. And it also has a liquid-based encapsulation to increase the module efficiency by 1.5%, making also the longer life of the panels. And this is a huge milestone in the industry that also supports the circularity goals that were mentioned before, that we have throughout the world, not only in Europe, but that are very important to get this sustainability improvements. Then the second part that we have in the project is on the digital tools, that these tools are made to enable dynamic data traceability for predictive maintenance, as well as for end-of-life decision making. Currently, there is not much data on PV panels. There is not much traceability. And given that also information is not only regarding Europe, but also China, as well as other places outside of Europe, this also makes it a little bit challenging. And in the end, the problem is that having no data makes it difficult for recyclers and repairers to efficiently handle the panels that they receive. If data was gathered throughout the entire life cycle of a panel, for example, since it's being manufactured, throughout the use itself, it would be possible to determine the composition and the presence of harmful substances at the end of life, for example, for recyclers. But also, it would be possible to know the usage with the details on the efficiency, the status of the different components for example, recyclers. So having all this information can then lead to a better overview of a panel, improving the decision-making on whether it should be recycled or repaired, or in general, what to do with these panels, not only at the end of life, but throughout its entire use. For example, whether a component should be changed, but the entire rest of the panel, it's okay to be kept, and if its life could be extended for longer. Because this is also sometimes the cases for panels that sometimes the whole panel is changed because only a component that they couldn't trace was the problem and not the entire panel. So this also can lead to new circular businesses models like panel leasing and reuse, which is also very important in the circular economy and for the sustainability goals that we have. So the FERPV projects brings a solution to this through the Circularise traceability tools, which enables to capture the data throughout the different stages of the panel and creates a dynamic digital product passport with this information. So in the screen, you see a QR code that you can scan. This directs you to a website that details the information from an example panel from Biosphere, which was traced through the Circularise system. So you can go through the value chain, you can click on the different components to check their details, and you also see that there are multiple data points, for example, the composition or the efficiency details, that all this supports the end of life recycling or repair that we just talked before. And you see that even some real data is being traced in some of the links that are provided there, that can also help the repairers and installers to check on how is the panel doing at any different times of the panel. Then the information that is being traced was defined together with Biosphere Solar and TU Delft, based on an assessment of the requirements of the different stakeholders in the PV panels value chain. So this involved interviews and workshops with recyclers, repairers, manufacturers, installers, policy actors, among many others, to get a complete overview of the data needs, considering internal processes, but also regulations that affect the entire value chain. And the goal of this dynamic DPP is not only to have the information that helps stakeholders at the end of life to make better decisions, but also, as I was mentioning, to optimize the use of the panels for supporting the predictive maintenance, for example, to be able to proactively act before panels get to a stage where they are no longer repaired, or where they get to a stage where nothing else can be done. So currently, TU Delft is also working on models that can help installers and actors in general to improve the management of these panels. And then the third pillar, let's say, of work that we have here, it's the Living Lab, where these solutions from the work 1 and the work 2 that I mentioned before, the panel and the digital tools, are being tested. And with multiple stakeholders. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have the stakeholders not only in a specific stage of the value chain, but the entire. So this really helps to validate the business models and the solutions that are being made in here. So we involve policymakers to make sure that we comply with the regulations that are being out there, recyclers to make sure that what we're doing actually helps at the end of life, the installers to make sure that the panels and the digital tools helps them to manage the panels, and the manufacturers, of course, to manufacture better panels. And we're covering this way the entire life cycle. And in the end, we can leverage the innovations that were made in this project, influence on policy, and think about effective future collaborations. So the last session that we had was this June, and we conducted a workshop with multiple of these stakeholders that I mentioned to have feedback on the digital solution, for example. And they were able to go through the different solutions, so like the QR code that I showed to you, and assess the impacts in their own activities. So for example, how was it for recyclers? How useful is it for the installers that were there, and also for the policymakers? How are these tools helping with their own activities, and how are they impacting positively in the entire value chain? So in general, what was found by the stakeholders, or what they mentioned, is that these digital tools were very relevant, and they are a way to address today's challenges. Having a way to communicate the information in a secure and accessible way, which is what the Circularise system is providing here, gives the manufacturers and the suppliers and the actors upstream, let's say, the confidence to share the data to the stakeholders that are downstream, and all the data that is needed for them to properly do their processes. And also another thing that was agreed upon by the different stakeholders is that the different actors involved have different needs. So the digital product passport should enable to cater to the different needs of different stakeholders. So currently, for example, the Circularise DPP includes different question lists and different types of data, where they can be, for example, visualized per category, so that the different stakeholders only see the data that is relevant to them. So, for example, be able to include the chemical data for recyclers, the data on the performance for the repairers, the instructions and the historical data for installers and the end users also, and details on environmental and sustainability impacts, for example, for the policymakers. Now, this is what we have done so far, but now what is next? What is missing for the FAIR PV project? So if we're talking about the digital tools in the project, we are extending the tests to get more feedback and improve the current version. So, for example, we will include a recycler to directly use the QR code in their own activities in a real life setting to see how this could help with their activities. And of course, going beyond the project, the idea is to have the outcomes and learnings of the project being used in the industrial setting. So engaging with policymakers is crucial to ensure the setting the ground and ensuring that traceability initiatives are supported, as well as developing relevant business cases for the tool's adoption. Because as we all know, it's important to have the regulation and a backup, of course, of how is this going to be commercially viable for the different industries, for them to be motivated to share this information and to have an impact in the entire value chain. So I think I give it over back to you, Trish, to continue with.
Yes, thank you, Maria. That was a very insightful overview. It's clear that massive collaborative effort is underway. Now, I'd like to introduce the rest of our panel speakers. So, we have Ian Lind, who's the co founder of Biosphere Solar, the company that's pioneering the innovative circular design and manufacturing of solar panels itself. And we also have from the renowned research institution TU Delft, we have and Urvashi, both postdoctoral researchers whose critical work on data ontologies and material science underpins the entire project. Now, to kick off this panel, let me first ask to the audience, what is, like, just to get an understanding of what your current situation, what your business is doing right now. Do you use any digital tools to manage or verify your sustainability data? So this would help us understand where you are on your journey towards traceability and managing your data. Okay. Okay. So now that we've heard what the project was about, let's also try to understand a little bit more about why and what's next. So, okay, Maria, maybe, or Ian, maybe you can start with what was Biosphere Solar's role to play in this project and why traceability now?
Yeah, so I mean, at Biosphere Solar, the goal of our startup is really to enable circularity to, well, I'm going to rephrase it, to set circular standards for the whole solar industry. And a critical part of that is really to ensure that not just our product itself, so the panel itself is designed in a circular, easy to disassemble way, but actually enable all the other parts of the value chain to also be, how to say that, be suitable for this whole circular mindset and circular flows of energy, materials, information. So that's kind of how we see it in our role, not only in the product and technical part, but also play this role of bridging, yeah, bridging different stakeholders in the solar industry to pay for this more circular future.
Yeah, that's extremely important. And Maria, what do you think is, why was this project necessary, and what role does it play right now and for future projects, solar panel projects as well?
Yeah, so talking also in terms of the digital part, as I mentioned, it's really crucial that the stakeholders that need information get the information. So as what we saw, one of the main problems of circularity in general is that there are no details of the data when you arrive to the end of life stages. So probably manufacturers can get information from their direct suppliers, but then the information is also not transmitted downstream. And also, even manufacturers have issues getting information from upstream. So not always the data is there. And if we want to get this circular economy, you need data to know what was before so that you can continue with the chain. So this project is enabling that through this tools that we're developing, as well as not only focusing on the tools, the digital tools, but also making panels that are actually recyclable. Because the core thing also here is that the products should be thought in a way that they can be used downstream. So they can not only be thought on how are we making a good panel to be used, but also how are we making a good panel to be disposed, or how to make it good so that it continue more and extend the lifetime and so on. So we're, let's say, having these two pillars on how to make panels better for the end of life as well as more durable, but also how to make the information needed for make these changes available throughout the entire value chain.
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. What you mentioned earlier in the beginning was there are certain challenges as well, right? To when you're starting a project like this and setting up this bigger project. Uh, or do you have any? Were there any like according to you, what were the challenges when you face when you do a project on the scale, and also in general when it comes to traceability? What would you see are the challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you very much. So the main problem is the stakeholders. The solar panel industry have lots of stakeholders, as if like in the other fields as well. So as a designer, for example, so we need to, at least from my professional, we need to understand the users, right? But which user we need to ask ourselves. So from the manufacturers, and even before the manufacturers, as Maria mentioned, all of the material people, all of the manufacturers, etc. And after that, let's say the even to the users, and after that recyclers, we need to understand all of the pathways, all of the, let's say, journey of the data throughout this story, which is a quite and a complex but somehow problematic, because we need to, so Maria also said mentioned about the one size fits all paradox, which is not applied to sorry for this one, which is not applied to this scenario. All of these stakeholders have different needs and different data, let's say, um, data needs for their processes. So, but in terms of the technical question, if we approach this question from the technical perspective, we are trying to develop, to understand the data needs. We need to understand first the data that we can have from the field and all of the stakeholders, right? So the scope was the biggest problem. Which data? So all of the data that required to get from the solar panels is also have a problem. So we cannot know without reaching the stakeholders, the data needs and all of the data possibilities. And after that, maybe in the future, the standardization and the integration of the products that we just develop from this project is the important key milestone, let's say. So after getting the data, how can we use the data, and how can we standardize, how can we integrate the data? And lastly, which is the future proofing. So the solar panel, as again Circularise developing new technologies, solar panel industry also have developed the being developed the new innovations around the field, around the product. So our designs, our ontologies, our DPPs needs to be future proof. So that's the another main challenge that we are discussing throughout this project.
Have you seen that there are, with the new batch of solar panels that are being created? Are they uh, making sure all these data points are more standardized? Do you think? How are you solving for these challenges?
basically the all of the new technology brings new data points. So which means that most of them not standardized enough. So with our ontology, we try to be generalized enough for future, specified enough for our current day, let's say current day innovation. So that's our balance that we are trying to find in this project.
Okay. And how do you solve for the stakeholder issue?
Basically, Maria and I, basically, while we are trying to approach the stakeholders, we design our methodologies in terms of, let's say, user study methodologies that we use in this project. We did some interviews to understand. At first stage, we need to understand data and all of the desk research. And then we did lots of interviews with the stakeholders, different stakeholders, from the manufacturers to recyclers and the procurers and the others. And after that, as Maria mentioned again, we did some co-creation workshops, the discussion workshops for this problems and research questions that we have. And by doing so, each step we iterate in our research questions, and each step we iterate on our understanding for this problem. So, which means that each time we just diverge, again we get to into another specific point, we create, and after that we get to another specific point. So that was our basically design methodology approach that we just followed in this project.
Yeah. Urvashi, do you have any, like, with the panels in itself and with your contributions in the project, did you have any challenges as well?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe firstly I can tell what we really do at the UDEL. So like as Ian mentioned that we basically work with Biosphere Solar, and then Ian mentioned that we work on the liquid fill technology. And then but firstly, when you have a new technology, you also need to see if the technology is feasible or it can survive the market. And then you need to see if does it have like similar performances to the current panels which are existing out there. Does the cost of the panel increases, and are those panels like really stable or not? So like these are some of the things which we do research on at TU Delft. So we have to see if the performance of these modules are good enough. We need to select some of the liquids which could be potential for that, and then we also need to see if they are as stable and if their life is as long as the currently available modules out there. So yeah, we have been doing some of the research on that, and like yeah, of course, a lot of challenges comes on with that. I generally had like some of the technical challenges, like because when you have a new technology, you need to overcome some of the new things. For example, when you have a liquid, then you need to make sure that the liquid does not leak out. You need to do a lot of things around that, and then there could be procurement challenges. So these are some of the things which we face. But yes, with time we did find a solution with that, and yeah, it's still going on. Yeah.
Okay, nice. How about you, Ian? Do you, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Could
Yeah.
you rephrase the question
Yeah.
again?
So my question is also like going back to what were there any challenges faced by Biosphere as well during this project?
Do you mean like related to just related to this project?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, I think it has already been touched upon, which, for example, if when we want to get certain information from certain stakeholders, then it's not exactly clear on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also because yeah, in this project there's a living lab component which is very open-ended, let's say. So there's a lot we can do. And so for example, let's say, oh, we want to conduct this, we want to actually test our panel on the technical side and how it actually performs on the end of life side to, let's say, disassemble and recycle. Then yeah, for example, we have been talking to some recyclers, and then we have received kind of, let's say, a mixed reaction, because of course our product is not perfect yet, so there's still some improvements, but then we also have some positive reactions there. So it's like, on the one hand it's a challenge, but on the other hand it's also an encouragement to keep going, I think.
Yeah, that's very true. I also wanted to ask the audience what is their understanding on what is the biggest barrier to circularity as well. Like, I know there are a lot of, as Ur mentioned, like stakeholder kind of issues, but then on a large scale, what is it? Would cost or supply chain or the data in itself be an issue for you? And while you're answering, maybe I can pose my next question to Urvashi. Um, can you tell me a little bit more about the reusability and repairability of the panels, and what makes these panels different from the general conventional solar panels that are out there regarding, the lifespan, or how are these new panels different?
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, that's a good question. So, the positive point about these panels are that these they actually have a very modular design, such that it means that you can actually take out all the components of a panel separately, and once you have all these separate components, then it is actually very easy to either reuse them, even repair them, or otherwise you can recycle them, which is not the case for the conventional panel which are present now, because they have the encapsulant which actually glues the entire panel, and then you have to just downcycle the entire panel, and in that case you actually lose on a lot of even critical materials involved in making these panels. So that is why the benefit of this circular module comes into place, that you can reuse the components. At the same time, you can increase the lifetime of these panels by repairing it. But I would also say that just the design is not enough. Again, if you do not have the information of like what all components are involved, you cannot even use that for the second life PV, or you cannot even reuse the components. And that is why I think the DPP of the panels, or the information of that, makes them very important.
Yeah, that's true. Maria, maybe you can talk about the DPP system and the traceability aspect of this. How is turning this research and these very real products into a working system, and what were the technical challenges that you had while building the platform, and the with such a complex supply chain?
Yeah, thank you, Trish. This is indeed a very interesting topic, and a lot of things can be said in here. And a little bit of everything had already been mentioned by Ian and Rashi. So basically, traceability is crucial to be able to do your processes. So if you have more data about what you're receiving from suppliers or from the manufacturers or from the users, then you can do better your processes. So if a manufacturer knows what components are in their components, materials are in the components that they are receiving, they can know whether they comply, for example, with regulations. They can know if they can improve their processes. And then if we go to recyclers, they can know, for example, if there is antimonium in the panels, they know how to handle them properly to avoid having any issues, any sustainability, or any further impact to the environment. But if they don't know, then they need to do testing on these panels. They need to do testing on the different components. And this is a lot of time, effort, and money that is being put into the processes, and then making some business models not profitable or not possible for companies, and makes also the processes more expensive, and also not always possible to be made, because if you have harmful substances, sometimes these components cannot be treated, and because you don't know where the substance is, you have to throw away, in a way, the entire thing. But if you have an idea, if you have information of this composition, then it's easier. And then also the traceability of the entire life cycle. So when the panel is being used, you can know what is the status of the panel, if the battery is working, if the different cells are okay, if a specific cell is the one that is damaged and then can be replaced. You can know these things if you're tracing in the life cycle. And as Ur mentioned, we did a lot of analysis of these stakeholders to understand what were their needs. And there was a lot of designed effort in here that also TU Delft and Ur did on the ontology, so that this is something that it's cross stakeholders, or like cross manufacturers. Is not something that is only for Biosphere Solar or only for specific panels, but the idea is that this is entire traceability for any industry, any panel. But this is very relevant because, of course, recyclers get from different suppliers, from different stakeholders, and that's also where the traceability is really relevant, because sometimes they don't necessarily know which supplier, but if they have a QR code, for example, or if they have a way of tracing each panel back to the main or the initial components, then it's really relevant to have this. And on the challenges, of course, as Ur mentioned, it's a wide variety of stakeholders that you need to deal with, and their needs are very different. And also, as Ian mentioned, not always the data is available, because this is really new. Digital product passport is something that is being mandated very recently, and also traceability is not something that was known 5 years ago when the first panels or so on were made. So it's something that is starting. So not all the companies have the data, and that's why it's very important to make them aware that this is something that has to happen in order to achieve the circularity and the sustainability goals that we want to. So it's also the challenge of beating that barrier and beating that threshold of sharing the information and trusting into the tools, so that the details that are needed for improving this circularity and for closing the loop are there in this platform, these digital passports, in this ontology that we are building.
It's interesting that you mentioned that there are so many stakeholders involved in projects like this. So, is there any particular approach or any advice that you could have for any company that's looking to go down this path, and what would be an advised approach according to you?
Yeah, like in general for traceability, it's important to first set the scene, let's say, to first understand what are the products that you want to trace, and then have like what are the components that involve in that product that you want to, and then start making, let's say, the entire value chain of that product. So what are the components, who are the suppliers, and then getting in touch with suppliers about this. And that's where also Circularise can help to reach out to this through the platform, and then also thinking of downstream. So thinking of recyclers, what are their needs, what are the standards also of regulations that you as a manufacturer needs to comply with. And I think also maybe you can add more, because you were a lot in touch with these entities, talking about what are their needs, what do they see as required or requirements for them to set this traceability. I think there were a lot of challenges that they mentioned that I think we had already touched upon, but maybe you would like to expand a little bit more on this, on what you saw from them.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I can add a little bit on the how can we approach and how can we transfer this knowledge to other, let's say, projects or future projects. So basically, so while we are talking with some stakeholders, we are just saying that, okay, what data do you need, right? So this is a simple research question that we have initially that we had, but this didn't spark anything on the stakeholders' mind. They just can easily say that, okay, I just need some bill of materials. I can say some, let's say, certifications, etc. Super simple and common knowledge. And you can, as a researcher, you can get these information directly from literature. But now, currently, Maria and we have let's say, a template that we can draft. We did draft before reaching out these stakeholders. And after that, while we are discussing the potential data needs, potential data challenges, potential data, let's say, future data approaches, etc., with stakeholders, we show these kind of already made templates. Okay, we have these. What else? We approach these with this methodology. So with this way, they can say that, okay, these are essential, these are unnecessary, but we have also this. So they can easily understand how they can talk with a researcher with some example drafts. So from now on, let's say, if we just initiate another research, we can directly draft a, let's say, ideation, super draft, sketchy ideation, and show them show them to the stakeholders and discuss and iterate on this draft. So in this project, one of the biggest things that we have, we did, let's say, iterate again and again, and basically finalize these drafts in terms of ontology, in terms of DPP, in terms of the predictive maintenance approach that we are just currently trying to develop. So start as soon as possible, iterate as much as possible. That could be my approach in future projects.
Yes, a sound advice. Ian, in terms of, just general end of life and business, pure business case for this data, where do you see that, how is it providing value for businesses and helping in potential your business as well? Could you give us a little bit of information about that?
Yeah, totally. I can give some more concrete examples. So we, of course, this project we have been working on the digital product passport with Circularise, but and this is more for now a, let's say, research project for in the scope of RPV, but the goal is to extend that to like our actual all of the, let's say, Biosphere Solar panels out there. There's some sort of, there's a digital product passport that's attached to it, whether through a QR code, serial number, whatever identifier. That's excuse me, that's the different stakeholders can use it. And for example, now with a project actually we have with the municipality of The Hague, they are in Netherlands, and they are interested to kind of implement this to the panels that we installed. So that's an example. And I would say also a bit related to both what Avashi and Maria said already, which is they're also partners, for example, that now we are doing a lot of tests with our innovation, especially with the new encapsulating technology, that some people are just not so sure what is the component or what is the material that we're working with. And there it's also nice to have a package, sort of present digital product passport as a package to kind of include all this essential information. Like in this case, it will be a material and safety data sheet that a testing partner would request to make sure that they're okay with testing this relatively novel material, for example. And the same story or similar story, not the same, but similar story can be applied for, let's say, more downstream partners, because our goal, of course, is to enable the whole circular solar industry. So we acknowledge that now recycling is the kind of the only option at scale at the moment. But in our long-term vision, we see that other art strategies are also being used, like remanufacturing. So let's say, actually reusing certain parts of the solar panel, like the solar glass, or repair. And if we really want to enable these strategies, then it's really useful to actually have digital product passport to provide, for example, provide more information, more data points on how those partners can approach it, because Biosphere Solar, we are more positioning ourselves now as a designer of a product and also of kind of the process and manufacturing, but we're not, let's say, it's not our expertise in recycling. So I'm just saying that this is a way to kind of bridge what we envision to the broader industry. So those strategies can actually be carried out instead of more on a research level, but also on a more commercial level.
Yes, I see that, like, all this data in the end, it contributes to better end of life. It also contributes to being able to, like you said, the R strategies, right? Being able to repair and extend the life of these panels. That's the potential that we're looking at, right? Not to just consider them, okay, like it's time to go into recycle, but then to reuse them, reuse parts of it. And it's also, this data will come in handy to know exactly what stage that particular panel is at, what materials are in it, to be able to reuse it effectively or remanufacture it effectively. And that's what we're looking at when we do these kind of projects, and extending the life of these panels as well. Okay. Any questions or anything the rest of the panel would like to add that I may not have thought to ask you, but if you feel like there's something important for the audience to know.
Yeah, I think it's important just to mention that also it's crucial to create this consciousness of the relevancy of making circular or having that circular thoughts in when building products, so that you don't only manufacture things to be used, but again to be um, possible to have a better end of life. And with it, you need to think of the data that is required to make the process a loop, to close that loop, let's say. So first, we need to build that conscious into the value chain, so that everybody's aware of the data needs and aware of these circularity requirements, so that things are made in a circular way, and then the information can be shared to avoid having all these issues of data not being shared or data not available, or the model or like the product not being thought in a friendly way to end of life. So just that remark. And thank you very much for all the questions and for the panels.
Yeah. One last question for the audience. We've spoken a lot about the benefits of having this kind of data. According to you, what is the most important benefit uh, that would be compelling for your business to have DPPs? And in the meantime, while you're answering that, we can move on to our next favorite section, which is the Q&A. But before that, I would like to thank the audience for joining us today. And any questions, you can reach out to us at Circularise, and also our partners, Biosphere Solar, AMS Institute, and TU Delft, who worked on this project with us. Now, I think some questions have already been answered, but let me pick the ones that have not. So, Ravi, he asks, how is the evidence captured for data provided by the stakeholders? How does the second stakeholder in the value chain trust the data provided by the first? Anybody would like to take this?
Yeah, so in this case, so how is the evidence captured for the data provided by these stakeholders? If I understand correctly, it's basically through the Circularise system, you create, for example, components, and then based on, let's say, mass balancing practices, you cannot allocate more resources or less resources than what you have already shared with the stakeholders. So you cannot lie, for example, that you had 100 and then suddenly you sent 200 because it's not available, or that you only had 300 when you created 500. And also because it's using let's say public versioning or like blockchains and this type of things, then it's a matter of, it's not a centralized database where data can be changed by an actor, but rather it needs to be approved by different actors in order for you to change something. So there is an immutability of the DPPs being created that doesn't allow stakeholders to change the information without making the changes public. So then the data provided is trustworthy or trustable. because there is an immutability of the information, and the counts or like the numbers created make sense, and you can see the entire traceability of it, and all the stakeholders involved in the change actually provide proof of such exchanges of information.
Okay, thank you. I think there's one last question. I'm not sure if anybody has answers to this, but if you do, will PV panels fall under ESPR-based DPP obligation, and if so, under which specific product category will they be classified? Anyone has an idea? If not, maybe we can do some research into this and get back to you.
Yeah, in this case, also we start with batteries, and we know that for this sometimes we involve like the batteries in there. So batteries for sure is something that it's the first thing. It's 2027 right around the corner where we start with the regulation, but also keep in mind that the ESPR there is a lot of changes being made, and the problem is not whether it will or it will not, because it will. The problem is, let's say, or the challenge is when. And the thing is that if companies are not prepared on time, they will not be able to comply with regulations. There may be a problem of them freezing their activities because they are not on time with the regulations. So if companies wait until it's announced and until the regulation is there they're going to encounter a problem, because they will not be ready on time, because as we have shown in here, it takes time to get the data, it takes time to involve the stakeholders. So the faster the companies do this, the better, so they can take steps slowly and prove or test the different solutions and find their adequate way of sharing the data. Otherwise, you're going to implement things that might not work long term. So it's better to take an early step towards it, because it's coming.
Yes, very true. It's important to make sure that, like, even with platforms like Circularise to help you with this data, it's important to um, note that with regulations, it can just suddenly come up, and then like you need some time to set up everything, and especially when other stakeholders are involved, the it can get complicated. It's not just about putting data in. And just shipping it off. So when other people are involved, it takes time. So you should be thinking about it now. Yes, Ian.
Yeah, and I also want to quickly add that yeah, eco design is for PV panel is currently, let's say, being what's the good word, investigated and researched. So there's already like a kind of like a task force from the European Commission that is working on it together with some researchers, because I was at one of the stakeholder meetings back in June. And yeah, as Maria said, it's really about when this will happen, because it will happen sometime. And yeah, definitely it's a critical component of it. And we're also in another research project actually looking a bit more into this this whole topic of eco design solar panels. So yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, I think we've answered all the questions. Thank you to all the panelists who answered the questions via text. I hope this session was useful for our audience. Thank you again for joining us. If you need to reach out to us, you can reach out to us via social media, on website, as well as you can just email us at info@circularise.com and reach out to our panelists on LinkedIn. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day, guys. I think we can end the session.
Thank you very much for all.
Thank
Bye. Have
you.
a nice day. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Thanks, team. Bye.
Bye.